You will die as if there's no Now there's an all-new house.
Morrison isn't his real name.
What is it?
God knows, we don't. His personal history was falsified and his prints were untraceable. It was possible Morrison had done it before.
You can call me sentimental, I don't care. I have beautiful friends, I have a wonderful new family. So what do you think? Can we give this little guy a home?
Sure.
That's my girl.
He's a wonderful man, and he wants to care for us.
I don't know. There's just something about him.
Oh, that guy in Bellevue that killed his whole family. Cut him up with knives. Maybe they disappointed him. All we need is a lawyer around here.
You're a good boy. He's a good boy. Isn't he a good boy? Your daddy's little angel. Hi, honey.
He's just some crazy creep. Don't you talk to your father that way. He's not my father. How can you even bear to let him touch you? Stop it!
We have to talk, honey,
About what?
about what is happening to our family.
I'm taking care of it.
He scares me, Dr. Pondering.
Who am I here?
Help me! Help!
You're a very bad girl.
Hey everybody, this is Shavar Ross, Reggie the Reckless, and you're listening to Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome to the Hysteria Continues, episode 306. And this time we're going into From Hell territory with 1987's The Stepfather, one of those kind of many mainstream movies that kind of borrowed quite a few elements from the slasher movie and arguably is a slasher movie itself, certainly in parts of it. So I'm sure we'll be discussing some of the other From Hell movies and where this kind of falls in the pantheon of those From Hell movies, which still proliferate all across Lifetime and Netflix and all these things. There must be From Hell for pretty much everything, from the family dog to the nanny to the milkman to whatever. But yes, this is Stepfather 1987, and we're joined by friend of the show, Austin Stenberg from, where are you in California?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, excellent.
So is it like 4 a.m. for you then?
6.
Ooh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
No, this is one of the very few things that get me out of bed this early.
Well, yes, it is. That shows some dedication. So we really appreciate Austin. And what's your history with the show? You've been listening for a while, or are you a kind of new listener?
So I think I had said this to Joseph when I first contacted you guys, but I've been listening for about 2 years or so, maybe a little less. I was thinking about starting my own podcast about 80s slashers, and then started doing some research, and that's where I came across the site. I came across the podcast, and I just dove headfirst in and didn't look back.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're still listening, and great to have you on the show as well. So I'm sure you're bringing... So you're kind of, like us, you're a fan of 80s slashers, I take it, if you were looking to set up a podcast on the subject.
I'm a fan of all slashers, but the 80s just have a special place in my heart, which I think is true for all of us.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it was good to get back to the 80s today with The Stepfather. So we'll come back to you, Austin, and sort of your views on that, but just checking with the other guys. So, Erik, how are you? And I heard some sad news that your soundboard's not working.
No, it is.
Touching your faces, I look deep in your eyes.
Did you buy that album on your recent trip to?
That's all I heard was silence.
Yeah, whatever.
So did you buy, obviously that was the star of Terminator 2, Edward Furlong, and the brain scan. So have you listened to the whole album?
No, because even my standards don't go that low, but I do enjoy listening to tiny little extra. I am sure.
Yes. Well, Austin, we've already recorded Brain Scan, which I think is due out today, but obviously that doesn't immaterial in the grand scheme of things when we're talking, because obviously we're recording slightly out of whack. But did you know Edward Furlong had a number one album in Japan?
I did not know that.
And that was him singing, and I still can't get over the fact that nobody thought of, maybe we should go for another take on that, Edward.
At least do some kind of effects on his voice or something. I mean, he's so tone deaf, it's not even funny. It's sad.
Well, he said at the time of making Brain Scan that he just repeating what we did last time, just briefly to put it in context, Austin. He said he'd rather be making a death metal album, but he had to make an album full of soppy love songs for the Japanese market. So it's one of the unfortunate things we found out when we were looking to brain scan, amongst other things. But apart from that, Erik, you're okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Apart from listening to Edward Furlong and Nathan, have you been partaking?
No, I have not actually. So there you go.
Okay, well, fair enough. And Joseph, how are you this fine morning?
I just had a big pretzel, so I'm happy.
For breakfast, is that a normal thing to have in your neck of the woods?
Not really. I was kind of in a hurry. I just woke up before we started recording, and I was hungry. So I was like, I'll eat a big pretzel.
Ah, okay. Well, it's lunchtime here, and I just were rushing because I've been out for lunch. I had a nice big salad and iced matcha for lunch. So, what? That isn't a euphemism or a code for vodka martini, I'll have you know.
You're living the large life, Justin.
I know. Well, I went to a great little vegan restaurant up near us, and it was they had lots of nice food. So, but I decided to have a nice salad, nice healthy Sunday so far. Anyway.
Well, I did want to before we get further into the recently seen, I did want to give a quick shout out to a Facebook page called Sinister Siblings. I was going to do this on the last episode, but we were kind of pressed for time. But basically, they sent us a rather lengthy kind of mission statement via email, and more or less it's this brother and sister duo who are starting out with a pretty interesting hook, that whole brother sister angle, and they're reviewing slasher movies on Facebook, and they did a really in-depth review / interview with the people behind that 2015 indie slasher Carver, which was kind of infamous for being written by a teenager. So if you're interested in that whole family dynamic horror movie review kind of thing, check them out on Facebook. They're called Sinister Siblings, and I told them I would give them a shout out. So there's your shout out.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like one to watch. So well, thank you. So, well, as Austin, I'm sure you know, in time-honored tradition, we always have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, do you want to take it away? What have you been watching recently?
Sure. I've been on a huge tear the past couple of weeks with some horror movies that I haven't seen. Started off with a few shows covered at various points, so I won't really go in too in depth with them. But first one is I had never seen The Last Slumber Party.
Lucky you.
If he doesn't have the AFCA Blu-ray, you've got to get on that because it looks fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but someone's telling me that it actually makes it look like a real movie.
It does. I was shocked how clear it was, especially for something so obscure. But so that was cool. Checked out Blood Song last night. It's one I had never seen. Donna Wilkes couldn't act her way out of a paper bag, but it's fine.
Well, the Frankie Avalon flute movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Psychic Connection, yeah.
I checked out Delirium, photos of Gloria or Giola or however the hell you say it. Joya. What a batshit gialli.
That's putting it lightly.
I rewatched Edge of the Axe, which I believe that's one you guys have done a commentary for.
Yeah.
I've seen this thing so many times, and I don't know what it was about this viewing, but this is the one that finally clicked for me. Like, I always kind of liked it, but this is the time where I just really enjoyed it. I watched the Arrow release. I've seen that a couple times, but this time it just really worked for me. I really love the brutality of the kills. I kind of had forgotten just how brutal they kind of do show every swing of the axe at some point. So I don't know. I really like that one. Another one I watched all 3 of the Maniac Cop series from William Lustig. The first one in particular is one of my all-time favorites. I don't know if that's considered a slasher or not, but I think it's close enough.
I would say it is, yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
So that'd be cool to cover someday, but that's a good one. And then at the end of this kind of rapid-fire section, I'll just mention I did watch the 4K The Abyss. I did hear that Erik had mentioned it, I think, in the Brain Scan episode about having trouble finding that.
Yes.
And, when I heard him say that, I went online and tried finding it myself, another copy of it. And, yeah, it is scarce, to say the least. I
finally found Amazon.com finally have a link on it, the US Amazon. So I've ordered it, but they said it might be 1 to 4 weeks.
Oh man, but yeah, no, it's definitely worth seeing. I mean, there's been a lot of hubbub about the AI interference from James Cameron in the post-production process, or not post-production, but the remastering process, and this is the least of the offenders in terms of AI. I thought it looked great, so that's always a favorite of mine. I think it's probably my favorite James Cameron movie, if either that or The Terminator. So that was great. And then watched a couple new movies, and there's a bunch that are kind of in theaters right now, like Immaculate and The First Omen, that I really do want to see and have some high hopes for. But these first two recent entries into the horror genre have kind of been crap. Night Swim is the first one.
Ugh, bland.
I mean, I liked some of the underwater photography and just some of the shots they were able to pull off, and with that, and the idea itself was pretty cool. But yeah, what a steaming turd that was. And then speaking of steaming turds, I also checked out Lisa Frankenstein, which I heard Nathan kind of shit on. I think it was on Brainscan also.
Yeah.
I mean, I really had high hopes for that one. I was hoping it'd be more like My Boyfriend's Back, or even something like Warm Bodies, but it wasn't funny. It wasn't entertaining. But I am grateful for one thing, and that's that Cole Sprouse was a zombie, so I didn't have to listen to him actually try to speak. So that was nice. But yeah, so that's kind of rapid fire. I'll kind of talk for a second about a few that I liked a little bit more. So I did watch one thing. I was really excited to mention this one to you guys. I don't know how I never heard of it, but this is kind of it's more of a thriller than horror, but it's called Minefield. It's a 1989 thriller that reunites Michael Ironside and Jean-Claude Lord, who directed him in Visiting Hours. It also stars Christopher Plummer as the bad guy, and his Michael Ironside's female counterpart is I can never say her name right, but Lisa Langlois. I don't know. So yeah, it's just a conspiracy thriller about Michael Ironside plays this Canadian police officer who starts having flashbacks to an earlier time where he was a part of some kind of CIA mind control experiment spearheaded by Christopher Plummer. There's a release through one of Vinegar Syndrome's partner labels, I think Canadian International Pictures, but this was just a quirky, fun little thriller. And I just love Michael Ironside. I'll watch pretty much anything with him in it. So seeing him reunite with Jean-Claude Lord was pretty cool, because I'm a big Visiting Hours fan. So have any of you guys ever heard of that or seen it?
Yeah, I saw it on VHS back in the day, 1990-ish, but I haven't seen it since, so I can't really remember a huge amount about it.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend that one. Something else I checked out is Jeff Lieberman's Squirm. So Jeff Lieberman is, obviously behind Just Before Dawn, Satan's Little Helper, a few others, including one of my all-time favorites, Blue Sunshine. Late 70s. I think it's set in like Georgia or something, or like something like that. The plot's basically just some power lines come down and send electricity directly into the ground, and it causes the worms to go apeshit. Nothing really happens for the most part for like an hour. It's got a lot of that low budget regional flair that I really enjoy. And then it just culminates in a really fantastic set piece at the end where the worms literally overtake the house. And I can't remember exactly who's in that one, but I do remember the lead is a guy named Don Scardino, who I believe was also in He Knows You're Alone. So that's a good one. If you guys ever seen that.
We have, Patricia Piercy, is that her name?
Yeah.
And we can announce that we're on a commentary track that she's the star of, can we?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's been announced.
Well, it's called Delusion, but I think it's been issued under its AKA of The House Where Death Lives. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Coming out from Vinegar Syndrome soon. Yeah, we're on that one. She's the lead actress in it. But I have seen Squirm. Yeah, it's a real favourite of mine, although I do find it incredibly disgusting. Just something about slimy worms that are just ugh. So the scene where they're burrowing into that guy's face when he's out in the fishing boat, and then the scene where the girl opens the door and just millions of them come out, just cascade out of the bathroom door. Oh. So yeah, Squirm, very effective creature feature.
I kind of found it, because I, funnily enough, only watched it when we were doing prep for Delusion, and I knew of the film, but I don't think I'd seen it before. And obviously a fan of Jeff Lieberman with Satan's Little Helper and Just Before Dawn and Blue Sunshine. So, but I was not surprised, but I should have guessed it had that that quirkiness and the kind of the weirdness and the kind of slight kind of otherness that Jeff Lieberman's work has, where it's kind of he kind of fills it with kind of quirky characters, and I really like the I think it was the sister, and she had like really 70s stack heels on.
Absolutely,
and she was like just clomping through the countryside in her kind of latest threads, and she was a lot of fun. So it had the kind of characters that you get in 70s exploitation. You just wouldn't get in a modern day movie, really. So but it also had that kind of weird, that kind of slight. I don't know how to describe it. Jeff Lieberman is definitely kind of a unique filmmaker.
Didn't we do a commentary for Satan's Little Helper, Justin? You and me, and I think Nathan.
We did, yes, that's right, for Treasured Films in the UK.
I wonder why he didn't work more. And it doesn't seem like he has that many films, but all the ones I've seen are, from good to great. So I'll just give you guys two more and then I'll pass it off to somebody else. But I checked out, this was actually yesterday, I didn't really have any high hopes for this one, but it was kind of quirky and strange. It was, it's called Twice Dead from the late 80s, I believe 88. Something like that. And this one was almost like Class of 1984 meets supernatural slasher, meets, I don't know. It was just the whole plot is just a bunch of punks are harassing this family who inherits a home in Los Angeles, a mansion of a former 30s film star. And they run afoul of some punks that are kind of staking out the house, and eventually it goes back and forth between the punks and the kids, seeing who can one up each other. I know there's a cat death in that one, so that was pretty traumatic for me. But other than that, quirky, strange, but really good time. Do you guys like that one?
I saw it a long time ago. I know it's directed by the same dude who directed a movie I used to get mixed up with Sleepaway Camp called Summer Camp Nightmare, which is basically Lord of the Flies with 80s teenagers, which is pretty good. But yeah, Twice Dead, I saw it on VHS in the mid-90s, and that's the last time I saw it. But I remember it being very bonkers, but quite enjoyable.
I have it it came out on Blu-ray by Shout Factory on a double bill with the 1978 film The Evil. So that was my first exposure to the film. I really enjoyed it. It's got Jonathan Chapin in it, who played the really obnoxious boyfriend character in Halloween 5. And Jill Whitlow's in it as well from Night of the Creeps. And Todd Bridges from Different Strokes is in there as well in a small role. I remember it being kind of fun. I do remember getting a Class of 1984 vibe out of it. I think because there's this, that's the gang of punks who sort of invade the party.
Yeah, so that was a good one. And then last one, and this is my crown jewel, I think, of the past month. I just had zero expectations for this film, and it just kind of almost blew me away. It's a British slasher from 2009 called Tormented. I saw a description that said it was kind of like Skins meets a slasher, and I think that's a pretty apt description. The movie is aggressively 2009. I mean, just from the hairstyles to the way they talk to each other, it is just super late noughts. But yeah, it's this very standard plot of just a kid that was perpetually bullied by everybody, and he comes back from the dead and gets his revenge. And I remember thinking the kills are just really fantastic. The movie was funny. It's definitely a time capsule of a simpler time. But yeah, I mean, the British obviously aren't necessarily known for their slashers. So when I saw this British slasher, I didn't really have the highest hopes. But yeah, it was a thrill ride from start to finish. Have you guys seen that one?
No, I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever watched it.
I did watch it back in the day, but probably around, 15 years ago, so I don't really remember anything about it.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it either.
But it sounds like it might be worth a rewatch.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's all I've seen.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Austin. That's lots of good suggestions there. So brilliant. Nathan, how about you? Have you seen anything you want to tell us about?
The other night I watched Talk to Me, and I really liked it. the plot is this group of teenagers are playing this game where they have this like weird hand, almost like a statue. And if you grab the hand and say, talk to me, like you basically can see like a spirit, and the spirit can also possess you. Now, I don't know why this seems like fun, but apparently they, have a lot of fun, and I guess it's a big rush to do it. But of course, things go wrong because that's the way that happens. And like a lot of, crazy stuff goes down. And, in the previews, I thought it was going to be more of kind of the idea of they all play this game and then die one by one. But that's not how this movie really goes. It mainly focuses on one character and all the crazy stuff that happens to her once she plays this game. I found it to be really entertaining. It's only an hour and a half. It doesn't really outstay its welcome to me. I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was fun. Have any of you seen it?
Yes. Elevated horror is just not my cup of tea, really, in general, and this is what this was. So, I thought it was fine, but nothing more.
I can remember enjoying it quite a lot. Sort of, I thought it was had some very effective kind of creepy passages, but kind of reminded me sort of it had that kind of similar feel in some ways to something like It Follows. Had that kind of feel to it, but I liked it. Austin, did you see that?
Yeah, it was all right. What I don't understand is where are people getting this like group of friends that are just super willing to like try a seance? It's like all these slasher movies or horror movies, they have friends that are just really into it. And I can't think of a single friend that would like sit down the Ouija board with me. Like you look at movies like Don't Panic or Talk to Me, and I'm like, I wish I had a bunch of friends that would just sit around and play with the occult with me. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah. So Joseph, did you see Talk to Me?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, Nathan, do you have anything else for us?
No, that's the only newer one I've seen.
Okay. Well, thank you. Erik, how about you?
Well, I've probably mentioned this one before. I've rewatched it during the week because I got the box set as a birthday gift earlier this year. The Amityville Cursed Objects collection, which is the 4 late 80s, early 90s Amityville movies: The Evil Escapes, It's About Time, A New Generation, and Dollhouse. So I watched A New Generation last night, which coincidentally had Terry O'Quinn in it, but I just wanted to quickly mention some of the cast in it because it's got quite a esteemed cast for a straight-to-video Amityville sequel. It's got David Naughton from American Werewolf in London. It's got Richard Roundtree, who's Shaft, of course. It's got Robert Rustler, who's from Freddy's Revenge and Vamp, and it's got Barbara Howard, who lesser-known actress, but she was in Friday the 13th, Final Chapter. But it's my least favourite of the 4 on the box set. It's still kind of fun. It's just basically artists living in this wonderful looking loft in downtown somewhere, Los Angeles possibly, and they inherit a mirror from the Amityville house. Ooh, spooky, and then lots of strange things happen. But yeah, it's the least effective of the 4 because probably it's the least trashy, but it's still worth a watch, and as I said, it has a good cast. So the box set's quite good as well. It has some fun extras and that on it. Is it better than Amityville Karen? It's possibly better than Amityville Karen, I would say. Or the movie that has the gothic bully living in the attic. It's called Amityville Justin. I haven't seen that. I'd have to check it out. Yeah, and there's one called Amityville Nathan about this haunted VCR that only plays Death Nurse and Crazy Fat Ethel.
Ooh, I want to watch that one.
Yeah. Well, the worst one of all is called Amityville Toya, isn't it? Which it's a house that emits a terrible sound for all eternity.
You can't speak to me like that.
So, have you had to play? Are you a fan, Austin, of the Amityville movie? The endless cycle of them. I mean, these ones are kind of. I kind of guess they're the second wave, weren't they? The Cursed Objects ones.
Love the original for sure. The second one's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. The third one, I'd rather just not discuss that.
I love the third one.
And then I watched It's About Time, and I kind of just gave up at that point. I mean, that was all right. I need to give him another watch, give him another chance. But before I forget, I just wanted to throw in here real quickly. You mentioned box set. My mind went into this, Eric. Did you hear that they're releasing a new House 4K box set?
Don't mention the war.
Well, if you order that new box set, Eric, I hear Amazon has a new AI feature that automatically sends to Justin.
That means I can finally trade in that house box set I got sent by mistake. So, anything else, Erik?
No, that was it.
Okay, well, thank you. Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, I only watched one thing. It was it's a movie you reviewed recently, Justin, called Pray for the Bride. It's a Tubi film.
Oh, yeah.
And talk about in one ear and out the other. I mean, that's pretty much all these Tubi slasher movies are to me personally. I thought this one, the killer looked cool. I mean, the killer looked really cool. I love that wolf mask. But man, talk about, just flatness. I mean, it's so flat. It's kind of like the Terror Train remake, but at least that movie had the good sense to be fun. This one is just a bunch of women just bickering over and over for like an hour before any real kills begin. And I've pretty much forgotten it. I read your review, and I pretty much agree with what you say in that review that I can remember from it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of these Tubi movies. I keep hoping I'll stumble across one that's actually pretty decent. I did like the Terror Train films, the remakes and the sequel. But thus far, everything I've seen from Tubi, I mean, I love Tubi, to death. But, let's be honest here. They do release a lot of shit as well.
I really, really want them to be good. To be good.
No.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Was that your joke of the week?
No, I've got an even better one for later.
He says it every time, and every time.
But it is strange, the Tubi thrills. I mean, I think that the Terror Train ones are, again, a bit kind of vanilla, plain vanilla, but they have a few twists, and they're kind of fun in their own. But it just feels like a lot of them are they're playing it safe. It's they're appealing to trying to appeal to every demographic, and be it's just like a plain vanilla version of slasher movie, which is strange. I mean, because a kind of similar, it wasn't made for Tubi, but the film Sissy from 2022, I think did a much better thing of that whole idea of a kind of girls' getaway or a kind of sort of a
it's like a bachelorette party or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
And that was much quirkier and much more interesting, I think. I don't know when they make, because I don't think these films are necessarily made for Tubi, are they? I think they're probably picked up, but maybe the people there's a formula that they have to follow or whatever. I don't know how it works, but there definitely seems to be a certain kind of blandness to them, which is a shame.
I don't want to sound like a Quentin Tarantino type, but you can really tell the difference between film and digital, especially these days with I don't know what it is, but the new TV sets and even like computer monitors and phones, they just don't cut it with these new movies. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like you miss that film look, and the digital is just, for some reason, it's always flat. There's no oomph to it.
Sometimes it looks too good. Like it's like Uncanny Valley almost. It's
Erik said this about, I think it was True Lies the last time we recorded, that everyone looks kind of waxy.
Yeah.
But with the digital photography, they look even waxier. So it's like, ugh.
Well, it's kind of like, if you get a new TV and they try and put True Motion or whatever it is on there. Everything looks like a telenovela.
Yeah, my sister's family have that switched on permanently, and it just makes films look weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched Scream 4 that way at Greg's a long time ago. He had that motion thing set, and he couldn't turn it off. And so it looked like we were watching an actual news broadcast instead of a movie.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know why. I'm probably good for sports and things like that, but for movies, it's not so great. So, excellent, Joseph. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, just a couple of things that I'm going to be reviewing for the site, because I've been in the UK for 3 weeks, so I've not been able to watch much. But before I went, I reviewed a couple of films which I haven't published yet to Hysteria Lives. One, did I talk about The Den, aka Hacked?
I don't think so.
Okay. This is one that was recommended to me, which I had seen a while before, and it came out, I think, the same year or before Unfriended in 2014. So it was the kind of one of the first kind of social media horror movies. You know, the kind of the rash of films that followed in the wake of the found footage movies. It became very popular in the kind of mid 2000s to sort of late 2010s. It's not mid 2000s, sort of around 2014 to sort of 2020, and. So this one is it's about a woman who gets a grant, college grant, to basically go on a kind of chat roulette style sort of program and sort of meet lots of people and kind of essentially essay all the different people she meets. And of course she meets all the kind of the weirdos, the kind of Willy Wavers, the kind of Eriks, all those kind of strange people you find out.
I'm not a Willy Waver.
I was about to say Eric's the ambassador of Chatterbait.
Yeah, we have seen evidence. If you remember back at certain
that was a long time ago when I was young and foolish.
But she kind of stumbles across a site. There's somebody on there. There's like a still of a smiling woman called Paygirl 16, I think. And essentially, she's trying to find out who this person is. And without giving it all away, she essentially attracts the attention of a kind of a slasher, a killer, who, as she digs further, her friends and family start being stalked by a kind of machete-wielding killer, and she gets more and more kind of involved in this and down this kind of rabbit hole into the dark web. But it's everything is done through like unfriended. It's all Skype video, mobile phone video, all those kind of things. And the computer screen shown on screen. But it kind of predates the things. Now it's kind of, for me, it's kind of darker than some of the other films, but it's not as dark as say like the Poughkeepsie tapes, or is it Megan is Missing? Those kind of found footage movies, which are kind of, but those it's not as dark as that, and it goes quite silly towards the end. There's kind of seemed to be a vogue at the time where I can remember something. Was it called Grave? Not Grave.
Grave Encounters?
Grave Encounters, that was it, where they do this supernatural investigation of the house, and it all starts off kind of relatively creepy, and by the 40-minute mark, they're basically throwing the kitchen sink at you. So all subtlety goes out the window, and it seemed to be around at that time for those found footage movies, they all go batshit crazy. And they just kind of jettison the idea of having the audience wants everything just to go completely crazy. So this does it as well, but it's pretty effective, and it's got a great central performance by this woman. It's kind of clever setup. It kind of just apparently it was a big hit in Russia for some reason, but it was less known in the United States, and Unfriended came out 6 months later and made lots of money. So has anyone seen The Den?
I did when it came out, but I don't remember anything about it.
Me either.
Well, it's kind of, definitely worth a watch. The other one I was going to mention was another one I reviewed that I got recommended. It's called The Victorville Massacre, which is not exactly your neck of the woods, Austin, but I think it is in California. I think Victorville's in California, maybe I'm not sure whereabouts in California, but it's a super low budget movie from, I think, 2011, about a friends who celebrate Labor Day weekend together, and a killer in a skull bandana turns up and starts to bump them off one by one. So very much kind of a very kind of typical kind of kids killed in a cabin style setup. But it has some clever twists, and also it has this kind of clever device, which I've not seen in any other slasher movie. It's just like every time a character dies, as they're dying, they have a flashback to something that happened earlier, which kind of pieces together the identity of the killer. So it's kind of painfully low budget, not painfully low budget, but within the confines of that, it's kind of quite a clever movie. So anyone heard of the Victorville Massacre?
No.
Well, I'll be publishing those over the next week or so. So so if you're interested, then do check that out. But so that's everything I've been watching. So I think we'll move on to the main feature. So Joseph, what do we have in the way of trailers or TV spots?
We have a TV spot for 1987's The Stepfather, ready to go.
Okay, so we'll play that. And Joseph, you want to come back in after this?
He used to look like somebody else.
I have beautiful friends. I have a wonderful new family.
Now he blends in with everybody else.
If he wasn't here, my mom and I would be all right.
But sooner or later...
Hi, honey.
He'll leave his signature behind.
He's just some crazy creep. Stop it!
Wait a minute. Who am I here?
The Stepfather. The Shocking Truth. Rated R.
Now playing at a theater near you.
For Henry Morrison, the American dream is everything. A beautiful home, a loving wife, and adoring children. But his family disappointed him, so early one morning, he killed them. No one caught him. He simply vanished, only to begin again. Now he's Jerry Blake, a real estate salesman, living in a beautiful home with his loving wife and charming daughter. Everything's in place, except his new daughter doesn't like him. She's standing in the way of his American dream. She's disappointing him. So that was from the back of the old Embassy VHS release where I first encountered The Stepfather when it became a new release for the home market. And right off the bat, this is absolutely Terry O'Quinn's show, no question. When people say a particular actor is a revelation in a movie, sometimes it's hyperbole and sometimes it's not, and Terry falls right smack dab into the latter category. I mean, O'Quinn is a wonderful actor. You can see the mild-mannered suburbanite weekend barbecuer and fixer of screen doors kind of glancing out with a smile at his perfect world, like so many father figures from like sitcom worlds of a bygone era. And then on a dime, he can turn that Cheshire grin into this kind of vacant look of disapproval and like simmering evil, all without breaking a single bead of sweat. I mean, he's so good that often the rest of the cast simply can't keep up with the wheels turning in his head. Jill Shulen, while nowhere near his equal as the foil, she does an adequate job as the only one who sees him for who he truly is. While poor Shelley Hack struggles at times with even the most basic line readings, if I'm honest. It also doesn't help that her character exists as nothing more than like a late in the game punching bag with little personality beyond poor wife who gets clobbered with a landline telephone late in movie, quote unquote. It's really just, a simple case of an actor being so good that no matter how hard anyone else tries, they're just not good enough. As a thriller or slasher or whatever you wish to label The Stepfather, the film has some really wickedly clever moments of suspense with Jill Shulen's character stuck in this kind of back and forth with O'Quinn's character. Just when she thinks she has him figured out, O'Quinn will move his chess piece to kind of safety, and she's back to square one. So many times, in fact, that she eventually relents to his facade and questions her own intuition. That stuff is great. You've also got here what is basically kind of a biting swipe at the Reagan era moral majority, conservative values nonsense, where the father figure is this all-knowing and kind of benevolent presence, and the youth of tomorrow can learn a thing or two from him, through a firm anecdote but never a firm hand. Jill Shulen, I think she kind of represents the rebellion against that outdated kind of apple pie and glass of milk worldview, much like the movies and music that we grew up with in the early to mid 80s. They kind of existed as counterculture to those traditional values, quote unquote. And it's not necessarily played for laughs, but it does elicit them with real wit. So, you've got a commanding lead presence in a story that basically saw fit to kind of take aim at the whole nuclear family hogwash of yore. But it doesn't necessarily add up to an effective slasher movie or thriller, whichever. For starters, I absolutely hated the Ogilvy character, who was this complete nothing burger. He's basically a means for exposition and backstory to the O'Quinn character, when I think, we don't really need any of that. I like that we start the film with him basically hacking up his entire family, and he's like shaving and changing his appearance, and that's all we get. The Ogilvy character tries to infuse a little bit of backstory, and I just didn't really care. I think the chess game between Shulen and O'Quinn is where the film is most effective. But for some reason or another, they saw fit to kind of introduce this outside element of manufactured suspense, maybe. It's sort of a will he uncover the truth in time kind of plot point. But, like I said, the Ogilvy character for me wastes a lot of time and detracts from that kind of, that aforementioned chess game between Shulen and O'Quinn. All for him to die not 2 seconds after he's figured it all out and he's told no one. I mean, really, what's the point? I mean, you take his character away and focus more on the back and forth between the two leads who already had more than enough, shared intrigue to carry the movie, and it would have been a lot better. That's not to say I dislike the film. Quite contraire. The characters, they kind of behave according to some of the beats of a script rather than what would naturally follow in this situation. And it does become a tad frustrating as it kind of skirts dangerously close to, I guess, undermining all the goodwill the film has built up until then. But, these are kind of, I guess they're kind of moderate gripes to me, but they don't really keep The Stepfather from being they don't make The Stepfather a bad movie. It just keeps it from being a great movie with a powerful performance to what I think is basically just a good movie with a powerful performance. So a thumbs up, of course, even if the movie were terrible, and it's most certainly not. O'Quinn really is that effective in so much that he would have saved it regardless. So I think it's a damn fine film in need of a few minor tweaks to reach that kind of all-time great status. But for me, the end result is more or less close enough. I'll say that. And again, like I said, O'Quinn is the reason to tune in. So, Austin, you chose this movie for us to talk about today. What are your thoughts on The Stepfather?
Sure. So it's funny you mention some of the other actors not really being able to keep up with Terry O'Quinn. And, sitting down and watching this for the first time with a really critical eye is the first time I realized that outside of O'Quinn, the acting is less than ideal here. There's a scene where Jill Shulin shows up at the front door with her boyfriend and he kisses her. And, it leads to this confrontation between Terry O'Quinn and the mom and Jill Shulin. And there's a scene, and after Shelley Hack slaps her daughter in the face, I don't know if this is like ADR or just a bad line read or whatever, but she says something like, "He's your father and you'll respect him." And it was just a really bad line.
It really stood out.
I was like, oh God, that was grating. Also, I don't really know how I feel about the Ogilvy character, but I think he is pretty disposable and literally disposable. I mean, he shows up for 30 seconds just to get murdered. He didn't even put up the slightest fight. It's pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. But yeah, this is a powerhouse performance from Terry O'Quinn. I just love everything about it. He nails literally every part of the Psycho aspect. He nails the understated, where he's just slightly, there's something slightly off, and then when he goes full tilt, he's just as good. I do think that the scene at the barbecue where he's got the newspaper and he reads the story about the man who killed his family the year prior, I think that particular scene has everything I love about his performance, where you see him pick up the newspaper, read the story. You can kind of see the abject fear on his face when he realizes that they're still talking about him, and then kind of goes to disgust in his face. And then he makes that quip about, oh, maybe his family disappointed him. That's why he did it. And he gives a really stern look over to his stepdaughter. And that entire bit, I just really love that part. It really just shows the cracks in the armor, and his whole performance as he slowly deteriorates is just something that I just really love. Another thing that really grabbed me about this film was the opening. First of all, you do get to see some Terry O'Quinn schlong for a second. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Yeah.
But that opening scene where he's covered in blood, he's shaving, and then he walks down the stairs, and just that scene of carnage, just all the blood, his family's dead. It was gripping to me from minute one. And I'm grateful that it didn't really go down that route and become this huge gore fest. It doesn't really ever pick up to that level really ever again, but that just kept me entertained from the first second of the film. Jill Shulin. So I'm going to throw out one of the hottest takes, and I'm going to say that she is my Scream Queen over Jamie Lee, which is a hot take. But, I've always loved Halloween, of course. I love Halloween 2, but I've never been the biggest fan of her other output from that era. Like, I've never been too huge on Terror Train, although it's my favorite of the other three. Prom Night's okay, and I just never got into road games. So while I acknowledge her greatness and I love her in tons of things, her 80s slasher offerings or slasher adjacent offerings have always been a little subpar for me. But on the other hand, Jill Schuland, everything she touches from this era is just gold to me, whether it's this one or it's Cutting Class. She's great in Popcorn, which I guess was the early 90s. And then another really good one that you guys have got to cover at some point is the Robert Englund Phantom of the Opera. What a surprise that was when I caught that about 6 months ago for the first time. That was great too. One thing I thought was funny is the way that she tries to get more information about him by sending off that request to the Seattle Examiner for a photo of him. It just kind of made me nostalgic for the old days before cell phones ruined thrillers, because
this movie would not work in today's term, and I think the remake kind of proved that. Yeah, I get your point though.
I don't even want to even allude to the remake, because that is just an affront to what an awful film. But
well, I will later, but it'll be brief.
But yeah, so just take out your phone and Google the name and the movie's over. So another thing that you would never see in a movie today is, from that scene with her boyfriend where she gets into the altercation with Terry O'Quinn, they reveal she's 16. And then later on, they show her just fully bare-breasted in the shower. And I'm like, ugh. I mean, obviously she was in her early 20s, but you wouldn't really see that in a film today, I don't think, or definitely not as much. That scene towards the end where Terry O'Quinn's just whacked Shelley Hack in the face, and he's calling for the dog to come to him, and he's covered in blood. I mean, now that was suspenseful for me. I don't know about you guys. I was like, oh God, what's he going to do? So I was really grateful that he did not kill the dog or anything like that.
I saw that as kind of his last grasp at that whole family dynamic before he had to kill them, was petting the dog.
Do we think is it creepy to have your real estate agent push your kid on the swing? I don't know. Maybe it's just the 80s. It's
probably,
a simpler time.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah.
We got to talk about the iconic "Who Am I Here" scene. I mean, that's what people really remember, and I've seen it so many times now that some of its impact has always been lost. But that scene is still just incredible to me, and just I just love the way it happens, where he, you could see it in his eyes where he's confused and then remembers, and that way he just picks up the phone and just whacks Susan in the face. It's one of those hits where I just felt it. I was like, oh God, I felt that hit. And then the movie's not quite as bloody as I remembered it. I remember it having a little more gore. The scene with Dr. Bonder in the house was really, I mean, other than the beginning, that scene, and then of course the end, there really is not much in the way of blood, but I found it just really suspenseful regardless. But I think that's really all I have to say about it for now.
Okay, let's pass this over to Justin. What did you think of The Stepfather?
Yeah, The Stepfather, I mean, I really enjoy it. I think is this the kind of the first From Hell movie? No, obviously not. You got the Bad Seed from the 50s and various
Play
things.
Misty for me as well.
And Susie and the Banshees released their first album in 1978, and that was definitely from hell.
Oh, Erik. But as far as the films that kind of created this whole kind of 90s going into the 2000s, well, mostly 90s really, wasn't it? With Hand That Rocks the Cradle, I think it was 1992. And all those kind of, when was actually, you had
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction was 87, wasn't it?
Yeah, same year as this.
So, which is kind of the spurned girlfriend from hell, I kind of guess. But this kind of played a part in creating that kind of From Hell series that went through Single White Female, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, all those kind of 90s thrillers that, and the ones we still see proliferate now on Tubi and Lifetime and Netflix. They're still from everything from hell. So I really like it. I mean, I think sometimes for a film that sets a template, it doesn't necessarily stick to its own template, if that makes sense, because the template's not been set yet, I kind of guess. So I was surprised that the, like you also actually the lack of the gore in this and the actual violence, which I think is kind of readdressed slightly in Stepfather 2, which I was reading Bob Weinstein insisted on reshoots with extra gore in it. So it was relatively more restrained than I remember it. I mean, a lot of what's already said, I kind of echo that. But there's a couple of takeaway things. One was that who knew when you have a family annihilator that always comes with their own smoke machine. Because every time at the beginning when he kills his family's dead, I thought that he must have set fire to the house because it was so kind of misty and smoky inside, but no. And then when he starts attacking his family later on, it again has that kind of sort of dry ice smoke machine effect going through, which I thought was very 80s of it. The other thing, I don't know if it's on purpose, but I don't know if anyone else picked up, there was definitely nods to kind of Halloween. With the beginning, with him walking down that kind of that suburban street, which is straight out of Haddonfield, even with the autumnal leaves, and the returning to the old murder house, which again looked very much like the Strode house in Halloween. Even sort of like a nod to we're talking about the character Ogilvy. Ogilvy. It's spelled Ogiville.
No,
so,
Ogilvie.
Oh, I-E. Oh, okay, I miswrote it down. Okay, but anyway.
E-I-E-I-O, Justin.
Yeah, but his character was kind of remind me of like the similar kind of character in Friday the 13th Final Chapter, which is the character Rob, who kind of goes looking, I think, for his sister had been killed by Jason, and has all that kind of basically the whole point of his character is exposition, and he just kind of basically tells the history of Jason and then gets killed towards the end of the movie. So it was almost kind of copied. I'm not sure how kind of coincidental that was, or that was, because it always fascinates me with some of these later 80s horror movies or thrillers and the 90s from hell thrillers, how much they kind of borrow from the slasher movie, but having that sheen, almost a respectability, that they're not kind of like video store horror movies for teenagers. These are proper adult sort of mature thrillers, but in fact actually still basically are slasher movies and borrow a lot of the tricks from the slasher movie. And even back down to the Stepfather, Terry Quinn's kind of character using these kind of almost some kind of post-Freddy quips in it, which I thought was I hadn't seen it for quite a while, so that kind of stood out to me a little bit. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, in some ways, for me, I kind of wish it got pushed a little bit further, perhaps it gone a bit more batshit than it did through the first hour. But certainly that kind of the final kind of chase scenes throughout the house, and his kind of the way his mask is slipping, and he's kind of it's done with such subtlety, and sort of that it kind of it still really works. And I haven't seen the remake, so I can't comment on it. But yeah, it still works as a good thriller, and it sort of stands up there with the best of the From Hell movies.
Well, I will say also, I'm glad we finally covered The Stepfather, because I really want to get to The Stepfather Part 3, which is so tremendously awful, but it's so funny. I can't wait to
Stepfather 3.
Yeah, it's great because it's so awful, and the acting is even worse than Shelley Hack here. I mean, it's just, you got to see it to believe it. Okay, Eric, what did you think of The Stepfather 1987?
1987 Stepfather. Yeah, I really like this, and I think this is a film where for once I can understand if the filmmakers went into an interview with Fangoria and said this is not a horror film, it's a suspense thriller, because I think it is more about suspense and intrigue, not mystery, and it's less about scares and bloodshed. The proof of how much I like the film is because back in the late 80s when I rented this on video for the first time, I was obsessed with the Nightmare on Elm Street series in particular, and any kind of horror film that didn't have tons of special effects in it, it tested my patience, I suppose, is the best thing, and I didn't really have a lot of time for things of this ilk, but The Stepfather really worked for me. I think there's a few reasons for that. One, it's really lean, it's a very simple story, and it's told within 88 minutes, and it has absolutely no fat, except for possibly, you were saying, Joseph, about the character of Ogilvy, who takes up a certain amount of screen time, not a huge amount, I suppose, but his character ultimately adds up to nothing. His character's sole purpose in the film seems to be to give Shelley Hack's character the gun in which to shoot Terry O'Quinn at the end. That's his only reason for being, because like you, I was kind of shocked that he spends all this time uncovering this mystery and finding out where he lives and what his new alias is, and then gets killed before he has a chance to tell anyone. He stumbles and is really clumsy in the final hurdle. And I thought that's a bit odd to do that, but I suppose it was supposed to be done for shock effect. It's kind of like this movie's equivalent of killing off Janet Leigh. You're expecting him to be the hero to come and save the day, and then he's sort of killed really abruptly. But apart from that, I thought that one thing that always strikes me about The Stepfather is, and I know it's based on a true story that's quite unbelievable, but I found yeah. But I found it really unbelievable that, like, all it needed was for somebody to publish his picture in the newspaper, and that would be the problem solved. Now, I know we're looking back 37 years now, and we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have the internet, but surely, like, he's still in the same sort of county, he's still in the same locale. Surely somebody must be able to put a picture out there saying, have you seen this man? And then that would solve everyone's grief.
Even in the movie, they give this kind of slack-jawed reason why the editor didn't run the picture. He's like, oh, my editor said no, for no reason. And they're like, what?
It's like they don't care about this poor family being massacred. It's like, I can't be bothered trying to track down this killer. Let's just leave it. Which I find kind of funny. But as I said, it's kind of loosely based on a story of a man who killed his family and then sort of disappeared for 18 years under a different identity before he was caught. But as I said, all it would take was him to have his picture on the TV, the newspaper. I know he had a beard then, but surely people could, look beyond the beard and see him. Anyway, what I love about the film is that the suspense of, will somebody find out who Jerry really is, and what's he going to do with them when they find out? And I think one of my favourite scenes in the film is where Jill Schoelen's character's counsellor poses as a prospective house buyer to sort of suss Jerry out. And I think that there's great suspense in that scene. As you can see, Jerry is kind of wondering why this guy is asking him all these personal questions, and it's not going to end well. And that, to me, is kind of the standout moment in the film. Terry O'Quinn is amazing, as everyone has said. I love the scene in the cellar where he's going a bit ape, and he doesn't realise that Stephanie is there getting something out of the freezer, and she has to sort of creep past him awkwardly as he's having this rant. His Inga outbursts I thought were just, great fun, where he disappears into the basement and starts ranting furiously to himself. The finale I thought was quite well put together too, starting with, of course, the famous tagline, "Who am I here?" before he whacks Shelley Hack in the face with the landline. I'm not sure if you could do as much damage to somebody with a smartphone, maybe with a tablet. I'm trying to think how this would work. I liked the slasher movie Cat and Mouse through the house as well then, but I did wonder, as a real estate agent, surely Jerry would have known not to step on the insulation in the attic and fall through the ceiling. Rookie mistake. Even I know that, and I don't know anything about construction. Step on the beams, Jerry, on the beams. But yeah, I still love the film. As I said, it's one of its great strengths is that it's under 90 minutes. It kind of focuses really on three main characters. So, there's no sort of cutting back and forth. There's no subplots to be getting involved with, and I think it gets everything just about right. So it's a big thumbs up for me. I love this movie.
Cool. Nathaniel, what are your thoughts on The Stepfather?
I've always loved The Stepfather. I think it's a great storyline, and honestly, just to start off on just a slightly negative point is I absolutely agree with you guys about Jim Ogilvy's character, in that I do get it was a shock, and I understand that, but I just feel like you could have taken him out of this movie completely and it wouldn't have changed anything about the outcome. Only thing he really did was get a gun in the house.
Yep.
And they could have had any way of having a gun involved, aside from him. So I don't know. upon rewatches, I always want to fast forward through his scenes just because I'm like, well, you don't really serve a purpose anyway. So I'm sorry, you don't. And that being said, though, I did want it to come down to like Stephanie versus Jerry, because I mean that's what the movie was building to. And I love Jill Shulen as Stephanie because she is resourceful. I love that scene when he's banging on the door and the glass cracks and she just grabs a piece of the glass and wraps it in a towel, and I'm just like, see, that's resourcefulness, and I like that kind of stuff. I do totally get where Austin's coming from regarding the nude scene that she has right beforehand, because I mean, she is in her 20s, and I was thinking about this as well. I'm like, well, they did this a lot in the 80s. Like I was thinking about Slumber Party Massacre. These are high school girls and we're seeing them in the showers fully naked, but I'm like, the difference here, I think, is that even though Jill Shulen was in her 20s, she looks 16.
Agreed. Yeah.
That's kind of the difference in that while I love all the ladies in Slumber Party Massacre, I mean, they don't look like teenagers.
Well, Jill Shulen's, she's 60 now and she looks about 30. So she's got great genes.
She's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do kind of get that. I felt kind of weird about it, even though, like I said, other 80s movies have done that, but it's just how young she looks that makes it feel weird. And I don't even think that the nudity was necessary, like, whatsoever. I mean, it didn't really have anything to do with anything.
Well, she was vulnerable because she was taking the shower right around the time he was going completely apeshit. So I think it was supposed to underscore vulnerability, but even still, it was kind of creepy looking at her naked.
Yeah, definitely. And also I think about, one part of her character is, she's got this boyfriend and, she's starting to like him. So it seems like, she's not a sexually experienced character. So again, seeing that scene was just kind of icky, but I mean, I'm not faulting the movie or anything like that. Like I said, the actress was of age. So, that's not like they did anything like legally wrong or anything, but I love the "Who Am I Here" scene because I think Terry O'Quinn plays this character brilliantly. I don't know that I could picture anyone else playing that role.
I can picture Bob Hoskins playing it, especially the opening sequence. Except if he shaved off his beard, I would have cried.
Yeah, he would have said, "How fat am I here?"
How rude.
And I thought Shelley Hack was really good in this movie. I'm kind of surprised that you guys didn't think she was.
Aren't you the one who said Ronnie Blakely and Nightmare on Elm Street was good too?
Ronnie Blakely is good in that movie. Like, no matter what you guys say, that scene where she's given Freddy's origin story is fantastic. But anyway, that's a different movie. But yeah, with the stepfather, I always love the scene as well because, I mean, kind of from the beginning that Jill Shulen's character Stephanie kind of has like weird feelings about him even before anything serious goes down. But I love that scene when they're having the party and he comes downstairs and just flips out and doesn't know she's there. And he's like hitting stuff with the hammer and throwing it and just flipping out. And I love it because the look on her face, I mean, it's like she's seeing like the real him for the first time, and it's pretty scary.
Do you think it's a little bit like when Erik doesn't think the microphone's on?
What?
Well, you kind of like if you've misplaced your chunky Kit Kat or something, or someone's broken a toy record, that you might stomp around your front room.
Well, I would have every right to stomp around the front room like Dawn Davenport.
I don't think Erik stomping around would be like the stepfather. I think it would be more like Inga.
Yes, I mean that would be more like Inga. But
my stomping around is very macho.
He would just be going like, "How can you just look at me and laugh at me, Justin?"
Yeah.
And then his sleeves would go back and forth.
Totally. Can you imagine if they swapped out the stepfather for like stepmother, but in the style of Inga? That would have been a good sort of Spanish or Italian remake, wouldn't it, the stepfather, if they'd done that?
Yes.
But, Eric's going to get Ralph.
I am.
But, yeah, back to the stepfather. The climactic scene at the end, I think, was handled really well. I love that kind of stalking around the house and stuff. And, And like you guys, I wasn't sure about the dog. I felt kind of worried for a minute that he might kill the dog, and I'm like, please don't do that. I'm trying to remember now if there was a dead dog in the opening scene. I remember, of course, all the family being butchered and like the blood prints along the wall, which is actually a really like startling opening because, of course, it doesn't show him kill anyone in the opening. You just see all the aftermath of it, and it's brutal.
I thought that scene would have worked a little better if Terry O'Quinn wasn't covered in blood. If he was like, we saw him as he got out of the shower and he was just going about his normal day, and then they stumbled upon that scene, that would have been a lot more effective.
That's a great idea. I think it would too, because it would have been great if, like you said, in the beginning, it shows him just kind of going about his day. And then as he leaves, that's when you see all the carnage.
But it's still effective.
Yeah, it's still very effective. Yeah. No complaints at all.
And it was extra brutal when he exits the door. He like leaves the house and then it pans over to the kid on the ground. I was like, oh man.
Yeah. I'm like, what did this family do? And I'm like, I am sorry, Jerry, but you are not going to find this perfect family you want. It doesn't exist. Like, he's been watching way too many 60s sitcoms. Like Joseph was saying, one thing I love about it is that Stephanie's onto him through a lot of the film, but after Dr. Bonder is killed, she actually, like you say, she kind of starts doubting herself and stuff. I mean, it really isn't until she does that investigating in his office that she kind of pieces stuff together. So, I thought that was great as well. And, I kind of wonder how he survived because, there is a sequel. There's 2 sequels. But, I mean, maybe he's like Jason Voorhees, keep surviving these crazy attacks, because I thought he got stabbed in the heart. But
I thought the exact same thing on this viewing. I was like, that looked directly in the heart.
Yeah. I don't know how you're going to live after that one. But in any case, I'm a big fan of The Stepfather. I think it is a great film. And like I said, even my little small complaint about Jim Ogilvy's character, it doesn't really change how I feel about the movie. I still think it's fantastic.
Cool. Terry O'Quinn, I mean, he's just so phenomenal. I don't know if you guys are a fan of the show Lost, but he was the trump card on that show 100%, because he kind of does that sort of the Stepfather thing where he's this kind of broken man. He's not like a sitcom dad, but he's like this broken man, and he's kind of a sad sack, but then he just kind of delves into something else, and he's so good at turning on a dime like that. I mean, wow, just what a performance. I don't know what else to say, but he just so carries this movie into the stratosphere. But do you guys have anything else to say before we move into background?
I just have 1 or 2 things I wanted to mention based off what you guys had said. One thing that Justin said was he mentioned the smoke that was in the house. I'd never noticed that until this viewing, and I remember thinking to myself, is the house on fire?
Well, that's what I thought.
Or is this just like, is this the film stock? Like, what's going on here? So, it was interesting that you brought that up. The other thing was, in terms of Ogilvy showing up and then promptly being killed, if he didn't show up, if he wasn't in the movie, we wouldn't have got that great line. I think Terry O'Quinn says, next time call before you show up, or something like that. And, the Terry O'Quinn's really on the Stepfather 2, which I watched back to back with this, and that was only the second time I think I've seen the Stepfather 2. Everything just amped to 11, like the one-liners, the campiness of it. It's just like the Stepfather on cocaine, just enhanced in every way. But what I wanted to ask you guys was, so obviously with Jules Schulen's character, there's a roughly equal mix of, this fact points towards him being crazy, and then this fact negates that. Maybe he's just a nice guy. But I want to know what you guys think about the mom here. So, I have to always remind myself, if this happened in real life to somebody, we don't think of ourselves as being in a horror film. So, if bad things start happening, we're not immediately thinking that. But I have to think that Shelley Hack should have known something was going on. And I even wrote down like the things that should have been like big red flags in the order of how they happened, which are, there were no pictures of him. She mentioned, I don't know anything about your past. which, okay, it's the 80s. Sure enough, that's one thing. He refuses to talk to Dr. Bondurant on the phone. And then the whole scene where he freaks out over Jill Schulen getting the kiss. I feel like those three things combined should have been more than enough for her to be like, you know what, I need to get this guy checked out. And then she even had a few minutes when she first found out he allegedly didn't work at the real estate firm anymore. So I just feel like she was a little too naive this viewing, and it kind of just seemed a little unrealistic to me, because even though they don't know they're in a movie, I just feel like there were so many red flags that at some point she would have had to have done something.
Love is blind.
I watch a lot of like true crime things, and you would be shocked at the amount of red flags people don't pick up on. I don't know. I think, yeah, Love is Blind is definitely one of them. And I just think that everyone has this idea that things like that just would never happen to them.
Also, I think people... Sorry, I was going to say, also, I think people kind of tend to compartmentalize things and sort of, ignore certain things that happen in a home because they don't want to ruin their perfect image, so people can be purposely self-delusional around what happens, or just try and pretend nothing is wrong. So I kind of got the impression that was kind of almost a bit of a commentary on that she was so enamored with her new life and a perfect new life that she didn't want to take notice of those things.
It's kind of like Erik ignoring his shelf full of Toya CDs.
What? I can't ignore that.
One thing I wanted to say that, I forgot about, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, Austin, is I did like the part when Jim Ogilvy first shows up at the end. And when Jerry sees him, he looks happy to see him at first. He's like, Jim Ogilvy, like, good to see you. And I'm like, it was just interesting to me how he kind of snapped into the whole, like, persona that he probably used to have with this guy before he ended up killing him abruptly.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows like he's really cracking under the pressure. Again, I'm beating a dead horse here, but fantastic actor.
Quick aside, have you seen Resident Alien, Joseph?
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
It's actually a really fun and quirky show, but just as a quick aside, like they've recently brought in Terry O'Quinn, and he's really good in that show too.
Mm. Yeah, if you don't remember him for The Stepfather, you'll remember him as John Locke on Lost, and I know he did a lot of those John Grisham. He did a couple of those John Grisham thrillers in the 90s, and he was definitely kind of background character, but he was more of a standout than the rest of the big cast. So, yeah, like I said, just a great actor.
He's also in the new Walking Dead series, The Ones That Live.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I haven't seen it, but, he's reason enough, too.
Although he seems to be a bit wasted in that. He doesn't seem to... He's kind of more of a cameo, but I haven't seen the whole series yet, so I don't know. Maybe he has a bigger part towards the end of it. But shall we move on to some backgrounds?
Yeah, Austin, do you have anything for us?
I have a tiny little bit. I had these broad goals of listening to the Scream Factory commentary, doing some research, but, life got in the way. I've been really busy the past month. But I did just want to bring up the fact that... the director of this film, Joseph Rubin, has a really interesting filmography. So he directed Money Train, which I've never seen, but he directed Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid.
Fantastic movie. So underrated.
Yeah, I need to give that a rewatch. I haven't seen it for years. And then what else? He also did Sleeping with the Enemy, which is kind of not less slashery version of this film, and obviously not as good, but still a decent Julia Roberts flick. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yeah, I saw that
he did The Good Son as well.
Yes,
he was mining the same territory with The Good Son and Sleeping with the Enemy. So he kind of typecast himself for a little while there as a director.
But I don't know if there's anything in between those three. But a trio of The Stepfather, Sleeping with the Enemy, and then. What's the last one you just said?
The Good Son.
The Good Son. Like that's a trio as good as any genre director. It's really good.
I like all three. Yeah.
And then the only other thing I have is that this is obviously loosely based on real life serial killer John List. And if any listeners want to hear a lot more about that, there is a podcast on John List called Father Wants Us Dead that I'd highly recommend you check out. It's only about 10 episodes, but it just goes into deep dive into who he was, and I think he even briefly alludes to the stepfather. So, but yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, well, I did my due diligence on this, and so I'm going to read through this real quick, and then I'll move on to you guys. But The Stepfather began production in October of 1985, and was finally released to theaters in January of '87, and it had nearly a year of distributor worries. They couldn't quite find a distributor until like the last second, and it finally saw its home video release later that same year via Embassy Home Entertainment. I think it was first marketed as a psychological thriller, but then the audiences didn't really warm to it, so it was rebranded as a slasher film with the TV spots and such. But I think it ultimately took in around $2.5 million at the box office against I think it was $3 million budget. So didn't quite make its money back, but it was the home video market that kind of earned it the reputation and the sequels and that eventual remake in 2009. And like you said, it was loosely based on the story of John List, who at the time of The Stepfather's release, he'd been a fugitive from justice for over 16 years for the crime of basically hacking up his entire family. He killed his wife, his mother, his 3 children, and then he just completely vanished. And for like nearly a month after the crime was committed, like no one noticed his disappearance or even that, his family was dead. And that whole month, basically while his neighbors were just kind of going about their business, he assumed that false identity and moved to Colorado, and he remarried. And, that whole time, police investigators just couldn't find him because no one could positively identify him. He was so plain looking, too ordinary. So he could have just really been anyone. And I think, Joseph Rubin basically took that character and inserted him into the kind of Ronald Reagan fundamentalist, conservative family values shtick. With old TV sitcoms like Leave It to Beaver. And I think O'Quinn even reminisces over the simpler times of something like Mr. Ed in the film. But John List was eventually apprehended like 2 years after this movie came out when someone recognized him on America's Most Wanted. Terry O'Quinn said he went into the role, it was his first lead in a motion picture. I mean, he'd always done like bit parts. He was in Silver Bullet as Sheriff Howler. And he didn't really know if the film was going to be quote unquote horrible or embarrassing or not. And he said watching the film back after all these years, he finds it to be terribly corny, quote unquote, but that he was very appreciative that people seemed to still dig it. And he also said a year or two after, he got a lot of offers to play pretty much the same type, hence the sequel, which he took because he wasn't doing anything and he needed the money. And that after part 2 wrapped, he had to dodge a lot of offers to play the psycho because he didn't want to be typecast, kind of like Joseph Rubin was typecast for a short period of time there with those kind of From Hell films. What else? Infamous critics Siskel and Ebert both called the movie cruel, brutal, and sick, though Roger Ebert heaped praise upon Terry O'Quinn, as he should. We were talking about the remake from 2009. Actor Dylan Walsh, who I like, assumes the role of the title role. He's nowhere near as good as O'Quinn, but he's okay in the role, I guess. It's mostly remembered now for kind of an early starring appearance for actor Penn Badgley, assuming the stepchild role. And Badgley would, of course, later go on to star in the hit series You as Joe Goldberg. And he shares a lot of similarities, psychologically with the title character from the Stepfather series. As for the remake on the whole, I'm not going to talk much about it. I've seen it once. I thought it was just okay. Sort of the Temu version of this movie, but watchable. And I think that's all I have. What about you guys? Nathan, what do you have for us?
Jill Shulin did all her own stunts for the movie, which I found to be very cool. Shelley Hack was one of Charlie's Angels. Did you guys know that?
Yep, in the last season, I think.
Very true. And, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, do you have anything for us?
Just a few things. I've got that Scream Factory DVD as well. That shows how long ago it was. And there's a commentary with Joseph Rubin on it. Now, it's not a huge amount of information gleaned from it, but he did say that the original director of photography who started the project, and I didn't realize it was filmed in 1985, which is Interesting to know. But the original director of photography got involved in a domestic violence incident at his home involving a gun, kind of like The Stepfather, Art Imitating Life, and so he was put in police custody and had to be replaced for the rest of the film. Now, he doesn't name names as to who it was, but I wouldn't really know my directors of photography anyway to know who it was. But yeah, so that was a bit of drama early on in the production of the film. The original script apparently had flashbacks to the stepfather's childhood, where it would show him being beaten and locked in.
I'm so
the
glad they
basement
took that
and
out.
stuff. Yeah, and the Ogilvy character in the original script was actually a detective rather than a relative. But Joseph Rubin said he thought making him a selfish relative, making him a relative, would add more sort of heart to the character. It was filmed in Canada and Vancouver. Did we mention that? And it was written by Donald Westlake, which is why the violence is watered down.
Dear.
Donald Westlake.
That's still not even your joke of the week.
No,
is
that's
it?
still not my joke of the week. No, but
Christ.
no, Donald Westlake was a novelist and screenplay writer who specialized in crime movies, and apparently he's quite a big name in the world of literature. So it was kind of a bit of a coup to get him on board this project. So that's all I have.
Cool. Justin, do you have anything to wrap us or finish us off with?
Well, yeah, I've got a few just sort of snippets from reviews at the time. There was the Orlando Sentinel said the thrill is back with The Stepfather. Said there hadn't been any great thrillers since Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill. So actually, we talked about ad nauseum about how badly reviewed slasher movies were. The Stepfather kind of didn't universally get good reviews, but it did get much more positive reviews than you would expect a kind of a thriller with slasher leanings would. The Peninsula Times Tribune led with "You won't find a better thriller than The Stepfather." Said it was to psycho thrillers what Phil Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers was to sci-fi. However, the News Tribune were a bit sniffy in calling it another Brand X horror flick. And they commented, said Terry O'Quinn's performance was very similar to Mark Harmon's Ted Bundy portrayal in Deliberate Stranger the year before. Bill Cos. What? Well, I'm just repeating what they're saying.
No, I know. Yeah. I'm just going to say Mark Harmon's not nowhere near as good, but go ahead.
No. But I guess it was that kind of, I was kind of comparing that kind of, that whole Ted Bundy kind of good-looking kind of all-American guy who has kind of got a very dark half, I kind of guess. So, and lastly, is Bill Cosford in the Miami Herald said, inside the body of by the numbers slasher films and teen-only thrillers, there's always been adult melodrama screaming to be let out, and said that the Stepfather was an exemplary example of that. So so it's kind of interesting again, sort of how even back then the critics certainly saw that the film was borrowing elements of the slasher movie, and they say I've always found it fascinating to see how those kind of mainstream thrillers have incorporated those. Although it is surprising, you mentioned that the box office was only 2.5 million, so it didn't make back its production costs, and of course on top of that would be all the advertising costs, presumably to backed by the company that put it out. So yeah, it is interesting that it's a film that got his audience on home video. So a lot to talk about The Stepfather. But what was the consensus on the group, Joseph?
Okay, 36 comments for The Stepfather, and from that, listener Shane Lambert writes, "Wait, who am I here? Oh yes, a fan of The Stepfather. Love it. Terry O'Quinn is great. He's a perfect mix of charming and sinister. Enjoy the sequels too, though how the Stepfather character kept surviving his injuries is anyone's guess."
Yes.
He'd do well in one of the recent Scream films.
Yeah, I haven't seen Stepfather 2 in a very long time, and so I don't really remember how they kind of finagled their way out of that, so I need to go rewatch it. But
hasn't it got that Stepfather 2 got the great scene at the wedding at the end? With
where they're covered
Foster.
in blood.
Yeah.
Heathen 73. Yeah, Heathen 73 says overhyped, quote unquote. So I'm thinking maybe he didn't like it as much as most everyone seems to. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Stay up to date on all that we're doing. Listen on Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and about a zillion other podcatchers, both good and terrible. Join us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month to help support the show, Or if you're financially inclined, select a tier that fits your budget for that extra monthly bonus content. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues, all one word. And that goes for our email address as well. The Hysteria Continues @justincarswell.com. That means over to you, Justin.
Yes. Well, thank you. So, I'm sorry to, you've probably been dreading this moment, Austin, but as someone who listens to the show, you know what's coming next. So, feel free to cover your ears, but it's Erik's inverted commas joke of the week.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
Did you know that one of the actresses in The Stepfather has a pet snail that likes to break into secure computer networks? That's what I call a Shelley hack. Shelley, a snail.
God.
Okay, I actually like that one, Erik. Oh my God.
You're welcome.
That was pretty good.
Justin, why aren't you laughing?
I'm crying on the inside. I mean, laughing on the inside. So, well, thank you, Erik, again, titillating us all. I think that was 3 jokes, or maybe it was 4. We had this episode, so probably some kind of record. So, Austin, I hope you enjoyed joining us. Is there anything you want to tell us about what you're up to at the moment, or you got any projects in the pipeline?
Nope. This is my first really attempt at podcasting, so I really appreciate the invite. I do have these broad plans of starting my own podcast, but life gets in the way and I just keep putting it off over and over again. But maybe this will be the catalyst, who knows? And there's just one thing I did want to mention to you guys. I thought our listeners and definitely you guys might appreciate it. I have a kind of a strange connection to a real life slasher movie actor.
Ooh.
Does the name, and I got permission to talk about this, so does the name Eddie Bowes mean anything to you guys?
Sounds familiar. Elaborate.
Yeah, so my therapist is actually, he's the lead from The Fear.
The one with Morty the dummy?
Yeah, it was a really fun moment when I realized, I was like, wait a second. So he's from The Fear, and I can't, I'm not going to say too much, but I've heard rumblings there could be a continuation in the story of The Fear. I mean, who knows?
Getting help from slasher movie royalty. That's awesome.
Excellent. Yeah, that's well. Thanks, sir. That was It's funny where people pop up, isn't it, in our lives?
So shout out to Eddie Bowes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Austin, for joining us. I think you have a future in podcasting. If you would like to, I think you should stop procrastinating and launch your own podcast. You'll never know until you tried, but you've been a very entertaining guest, so thank you, and very knowledgeable as well.
Yes.
So excellent. And so what are we playing out with, Joseph?
Well, what are we covering next? It's Nathan's pick.
That's true. Yes, of course.
Are you positive it's my pick next?
Well, this is mine. You're next.
Okay. Well, it's going to be a surprise, you guys.
Because you've not picked it yet.
Well,
perhaps. Getting Fangoria flashback vibes here.
I will find something really, really good. I promise.
Oh dear, that's got me worried, isn't it? Okay, well, what are we playing out with, Joseph?
Well, we are playing out with Dad Vibes by Limp Bizkit. That's the only song I could think of that would tertiarily fit this film.
Okay, well, we'll catch you next time on The Hysteria Continues, and thank you, Austin, once again for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show in the not too distant future. So
thank you, Austin.
And say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Avita Sane.
Goodbye.
Later.
Bye.
Can't live with them, can't live without them. New kid back on the block with a